And what first drew me into it was Denisova Cave in Siberia. I think everybody's heard of the Neanderthals.
People discuss, I was having an argument the other day where they see a Neanderthal.
Deep in a frozen cave in Siberia, a fragment of ancient bone lay buried beneath the silence of 40 millennia. When scientists extracted its DNA and fit it into a neural network called Paleolingua, something impossible happened. The data began to move, to breathe, to speak. At first it looked like random genetic noise, A's, T's, C's, and G's tangled in chaos. But then the machine recognized patterns, structures that followed rules, rhythms, syntax. It wasn't just a genome, it was a language, a message written in the biology of a vanished people, the Neanderthals. Their DNA wasn't just a record of life, it was a story. And as the AI began to translate those genetic words, fire, sky, mother, fear, the truth grew darker, because the final sentences weren't about the past at all. They were about us. What if their last message wasn't a goodbye, but a warning? In a dimly lit lab at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, a handful of researchers gathered around a single glowing monitor. The project was codenamed ECHO, and their mission was simple, so they thought. Decode the non-coding regions of Neanderthal DNA, the so-called junk sequences that made up 98% of their genome. They fed the fragments, recovered from caves in Croatia, Spain, and Siberia, into Paleolingua, an AI built to detect linguistic patterns where the human eye saw only noise. For weeks, the servers hummed in silence, producing nothing but endless lines of code. Then, one night, the pattern shifted. A rhythm emerged, a repetition too deliberate to be chance. At first, the team thought it was a glitch, some interference in the data, but the sequences kept repeating, building structure upon structure, as if the genome itself were trying to speak. When Paleolingua translated the first line, the room went still. It was one word: fire. No one in that lab could have imagined what the next word would reveal. The next word appeared like a heartbeat in the code, then another, then 100 more. Paleolingua had found rhythm, patterns that behaved like grammar. Nouns, verbs, modifiers, all formed from the same 4 genetic letters. It was language, but not as we knew it. Every cell in a Neanderthal body had carried this silent syntax, a biological poetry written into their DNA. What scientists once called junk was now a living archive, a hard drive of thought. The AI recognized recurring clusters that translated roughly to rock, water, and sky. But it also detected relationships: mother linked with warmth and safety, fire with hunger and fear. It wasn't just communication, it was consciousness encoded in matter. The researchers realized they weren't decoding data, they were reading memory. The Neanderthal genome wasn't random, it was a song, structured and intentional, preserved by evolution itself. And as the AI translated deeper, one unsettling truth became clear. This wasn't the past reaching out to us. It was us remembering them. What else was buried in that ancient code, waiting to awake?
As the AI translated deeper into the Neanderthal code, something unexpected happened. The words began to take on feeling. The genome didn't just name things, it understood them. Fire wasn't simply an element, it was warmth, hunger, fear, and reverence bound together. Water was described as the thing that remembers the sky. Even mother carried layers, shelter, safety, and the pulse of life. Every term was a story, each phrase a thread woven into the soul of their world. Their language wasn't a tool of dominance like ours. It was an expression of belonging. They didn't label the earth, they spoke with it. The deeper Paleolingua went, the clearer the realization became this was not a primitive mind. This was philosophy encoded in flesh. A people who saw meaning in everything, even silence. The researchers stopped calling it data. They started calling it music. But soon, the music shifted, and the next translation would haunt them forever. Through Paleolingua's digital lens, the ancient world began to breathe again. The Neanderthal worldview not through artifacts or bones, but through thought itself. Their words revealed a consciousness bound to the rhythm of nature. They didn't live on the earth, they lived within it. A river was the long snake that drinks the sky. A mammoth was the walking mountain that gives life. Even the stars had stories, two brothers chasing a bison across the night. To them, every sound, every wind, every creature was part of one living poem. Their language wasn't about possession, it was about participation. Theirs was a world where the sacred and the physical were one and the same. As the AI stitched meaning from code, scientists realized they were witnessing not primitive thought, but symmetry, a civilization that understood balance more deeply than we ever have. And yet, as Paleolingua translated further, the harmony began to fracture. A shadow entered their language, one that spoke of fear, speed, and something new. Something had appeared on their horizon, and it looked like us. The Neanderthal genome began to change. Their words, once filled with balance and reverence, grew tense. Patterns of fear appeared where peace once lived. Paleolingua detected a shift in the syntax, as if the story itself had turned. The AI translated a new word that kept recurring, the thin-boned people. It was their name for us, Homo sapiens. To them we were strange and unsettling. They described us as the fast talkers, the ones who stare, and most hauntingly, the fire that consumes. They watched as our kind entered their valleys, hunted loudly, took more than we needed, and moved with a restless hunger. To a species that saw the world as sacred, we must have seemed like chaos wearing skin. The Neanderthals didn't record war, only confusion and sorrow, a sense that the song of the earth was going out of tune. The genetic text showed their awe mixed with dread. They had met their reflection, and it terrified them, because what they saw in us was the beginning of their end. The deeper Paleolinguists searched, the more the Neanderthal language turned to despair. Where there had once been harmony, there was now fear. The words for home and plenty began to vanish, replaced by phrases that meant wandering and emptiness. Their records spoke of watching us, the thin-boned people, spread faster than fire, reshaping the land, taking everything and giving nothing back. In their genetic memory, we weren't conquerors, we were a storm. Their word for humanity merged with their word for flame, something that brought warmth but destroyed everything it touched. To them, we were the fire that consumes. They saw our brilliance, but they also saw the cost, the noise, the speed, the hunger that never ended.
Their last shared sequences read like lamentations, not hatred. Sorrow for a clever species that had forgotten how to listen. And in their silence, a truth echoed. We were not the future they feared. We were the prophecy they saw coming. But the final verses in their code were not about us conquering them. They were about the world turning against them both. The final millennia of the Neanderthal genome read like the last pages of a dying book. Their words grew fragmented, shorter, colder, echoes of a world unraveling. The AI translated lines that spoke of the sky turning its back, of long nights without stars, and the wind that carries no scent of prey. The herds vanished, the rivers froze, and the forests withdrew into silence. Scientists knew this matched the climate collapse that swept across Ice Age Europe, but the Neanderthals didn't describe weather. they described brief. To them, the earth wasn't dying, it was weeping. Their sacred bond with the land was breaking, and their words, once alive with song, became eulogies. The language shifted from reverence to sorrow, then to something almost human, resignation. They no longer spoke of tomorrow, only of the fading song. It was as if the world itself had fallen silent, and they were the last ones listening. But hidden inside those final strands of DNA was something no one expected. One last message meant for the future. When Paleolingua reached the final layer of the Neanderthal genome, it uncovered something no one had seen before. A sequence too structured to be random, too deliberate to be nature's mistake. It wasn't a memory, it was a message. Translated line by line, it formed a final testament, what the AI called the future echo. It spoke not of beasts or ice, but of us. They hold the fire, but do not feel its warmth. They drink the water, but do not hear its story. They take from the land, but do not give back. Their hunger is a hole that can never be filled. It was a prophecy disguised as poetry, a farewell encoded in life itself. The Neanderthals had seen the truth before their end, that the ones who would inherit the earth would master the world but forget how to belong to it. For 40,000 years their warning slipped in silence, until a machine woke it. But what Paleolingua found next suggested their message wasn't only a warning, it was a mirror. As the translation deepened, Paleolingua detected layers hidden beneath the prophecy, echoes of emotion encoded between the lines. The AI recognized tone, emphasis, even rhythm, a linguistic heartbeat. It wasn't a curse, it was sorrow. They hadn't condemned us, they had pitied us. To them, we were children playing with divine power, masters of fire, blind to its consequences. They wrote not in anger, but in grief, like elders watching a future they couldn't save. They will cover the world, one strand read, but their world will be empty. Scientists sat in stunned silence. They realized this wasn't just anthropology, it was reflection. The Neanderthals had seen what we would become, a species driven by speed, consumption, and control. And in their dying breath, they saw themselves fading as a preview of our fate. We didn't just inherit their DNA, we inherited their warning. And what Paleolingua found next suggested their extinction might not have been the end at all. The final lines of the Neanderthal genome didn't fade into silence, they pulsed. A rhythm repeating like a heartbeat resonated through the code. When Paleolingua amplified the sequence, it formed a pattern eerily similar to our own DNA. The implication was staggering. The message wasn't left for us, it was left within us. Their words weren't written to warn strangers, they were written to awaken descendants. We carry their voices in our blood, their wisdom, their sorrow, their prophecy. They knew we would one day find it. They knew the same fire that consumed them would burn brighter in us. And now, 40,000 years later, their final whisper rises from the dust. We are not gone. We are the echo, and the echo remembers. The question is no longer what they said, but whether we're ready to listen. Because their story didn't end in the Ice Age. It's ending right now. The AI went silent, but the code kept pulsing, as if something ancient was still speaking.